Hello, and welcome to Paranoid or Protective De-Risking Client Cybersecurity for Partners. I'm Shannon Murphy, Chief Marketer at Zomentum, the sales acceleration platform built exclusively for the channel. Let me tell you a little bit about our guests, who I just adore. Every call I have with them is fantastic. Harry Boyne is the co-founder and technical director of Chalkline, one of London's leading IT managed service providers and Microsoft cloud solution providers for going on 5 years. And congratulations to them. I just saw your 5-year anniversary on LinkedIn.
Thank you. Congrats.
Building out a great team. He thoroughly enjoys creating unique, best-of-breed solutions, which meet all customer expectations, and brings them ahead of the curve. Al Alper is founder and CEO of Absolute Logic Inc., an MSP based in Connecticut, and CyberGuard360, a channel-only company providing advanced cybersecurity platforms to MSPs, MSSPs, and IT service providers. They're also a Zomentum partner, and we very much enjoy this relationship. It's fantastic. He is a serial entrepreneur, having founded several successful companies. Al is passionate about security and compliance. He can be found proselytizing about culture as a primary driver of security and compliance to international CEOs in NASDAQ, the halls of Harvard Business School and MIT, and in a myriad of boardrooms around the country. And myriad is one of my favorite words. So points points on a lovely bio. So thank you both for being here today. And I just want to let this audience know we are going to have such a good time because we have some very smart gentlemen on the line who also know how to have a good time. Okay, so
just got to remind ourselves the calls are recorded. That's all.
Recording in progress.
Exactly.
So insurance compliance, it's top of mind for almost every SMB. That's why we're here. That's why we're holding this session. So what are the most common areas of protection that MSPs must offer their clients?
I'll jump into that. I'll jump into that first, not to monopolize the conversation. So by way of background, we're deeply invested in the insurance space in our MSP. In fact, CyberGuard was born predominantly because of the relationship we have in the insurance space, amongst other, but in financial services writ large, but the insurance space in particular. And that was born as a result of one of the first regulations ever for the insurance industry around cybersecurity. It was a New York reg that came out it was promulgated in 2016. It came out in 2017. And as a result of that, there's more to that background. I won't bore everybody with it. That would definitely monopolize this conversation. Anyway, the insurance market over the last year and a half, give or take an ish, has gotten very, very restrictive relative to what they are willing to pay out on and predicated on what MSPs are doing, not just for themselves, but for their clients. And so as MSPs consider what they're offering their client, and I want to add to this a little bit later on in our conversation with the DOJ's latest release, which is really interesting that it came out just yesterday in advance of this webinar. It's almost like they knew we were going to have this webinar and they made this announcement, but I'll get to that in a few minutes. What insurance companies are beginning to do, there's something called a DEC page or a declarations page in everybody's insurance policy. And what that declarations page, again, DEC page for short, does is it lists all the things that they will not pay for if you have not done them. Basically, they're the exclusions that says if you say you're doing training and you don't do training, we're not paying if you're breached. If you say that you have a firewall and you have a router, we're not paying if you're breached. So they are the list of what they will not pay you for in the event of a loss if you haven't fulfilled your obligation on that side. And so as MSPs consider what they're offering their clients, they need to, I strongly encourage, we do this in our MSP, I would strongly encourage you to review what their coverages look like with them. and see what is excluded from coverage in the event of, i.e., if they don't have training and they're supposed to have training, they're not going to be covered for a breach, and then offer those services. At a low level, what we've seen, and we've got some 150 plus clients in my MSP, what we have seen is that they have some entry level things that all carriers want their clients to have if they're going to have cyber liability insurance and they're going to pay out on a claim. Top of that list is training. And interestingly enough about training is they don't set a standard, they just say training. And so anybody who's anybody knows you have really good training, and then you have check the box training. And all of that counts. I'm not saying that you should use check the box training, by the way. I'm just saying that all of it counts. And so MSPs should be not just offering training, they should be helping their clients actually go through the training. So in my MSP, as an example, when we onboard somebody, I take over the responsibility of getting their team to go through training. And we do that through a series of, we use our platform, our CyberGuard platform, obviously. So a lot of that's done on an automated basis, but even before that, we were doing it. And that relieves the burden from the CEO. And therefore, they're much more willing to let us impart that on their team. And that's really the top of the list for what insurance companies are looking for. Are you doing training? And then there's all the things that almost every MSP is doing: endpoint protection, perimeter protection, spam and email filtering. Those are kind of the four high bar things: training, filtering, endpoint protection, perimeter protection, that you need to have in place as a baseline if you're going to have a carrier cover you for cyber liability.
Yeah.
Don't forget MFA there.
Yeah,
point number 0.
I know you're building out
MFA.
a bundle. Harry, I know you're building out a bundle, and I think that could probably be inspiration for some people who are also building out their first cybersecurity offerings. And aren't you tiering based upon training as well?
Well, so about 2 years ago, we created a bundle that we started selling to our customers that was a one size fits all. It was you didn't have these products. Let's bring in our essential products effectively. COVID hit just as we were kind of getting on the right path, which didn't help, although we've still done quite a lot of deployments and most of our customers now have this. So it's things like everyone's got MFA, everyone's got some email filtering, Office 365 backup, elements like that. We're now creating our latest security bundle stack, which is taking far longer than I thought it ever possibly could. And in that stack, we're making sure we include, again, MFA has to be there. MFA is the first thing. If you don't have that, we're not talking to you. But then also things like definitely training. We want to be sending phishing emails out. We are looking at possibly having on more of the premium stacks, maybe some SOC monitoring or some SASE, some network edge stuff. And also maybe looking at password managers and things that aren't necessarily always, they're a bit more productivity in between the two, but you're surprised how many people have still got that spreadsheet or that book that's on their desk or the sticky notes that are on their monitors, and they still don't change those passwords or they don't put MFA on it. So having a password manager which supports MFA, does dark web monitoring, all of a sudden that's a godsend for us.
And I think that's what two things that you said are I think critically important. One of them, that's how unbelievably long it's taking you to build your stack, right? Because when we first started, it took us a year to put our stack together, a full year from start. Like, okay, we want to do this. What is it we want to do, right? So we want to protect
constantly
our clients.
aiming for perfection as well.
I mean, yes, that's brutal, by the way. And that year, and it still wasn't perfect by any measure, but it was now good enough to go to market. And that stack was wide and deep, but it needed to be, right? Because if you think about the attack surface and how broad that is, and having to at least cover as much of that as possible at a price point that's reasonable, right? Because ultimately, if you build, I do this when I give speeches on this all the time. If you look at what covering the attack surface is, actually what I'll do, Shannon, I'll send this to you and you can send it around to all the attendees. I have this graphic that my team built about covering the full attack surface. And there are some 70 plus elements that would be added to your stack if you were to cover the attack surface at a rough cost to the MSP of between $1,200 and $1,400 per user. That's cost, right? So you couldn't possibly cover the entire stack, cover the entire attack surface. So you have to build something that is affordable but protective, and that's why it takes so long. I'm sure Harry's going through this now as he's building it. Like, okay, what do I weigh into this? And what do I consider basic and what do I consider advanced?
And you've got that constant, the thing that you don't include is the way someone's going to get in. It's that you've got to be pragmatic. At the end of the day, you take risks every day. Which risks are you willing to take? Which are the ones that make the most sense? And, we know where our client, we have conversations where, do we look at doing endpoint vulnerability assessments? Well, 99% of attacks that we get reported are caused by phishing links, people clicking phishing emails, people putting passwords in and not having MFA. So actually, we should be focusing on what happens there. How do we protect our data? How do we protect our identity? And yes, endpoints are important, but maybe we need to be focusing elsewhere initially, at least.
Yeah,
absolutely. Because time is money, and you can't be everywhere all the time. Resources are finite. You have to 1,000% agree.
Yeah. And so that brings me to kind of my next question. I love it. You guys are already anticipating this because we do want to talk about risk, right? I think that's a huge fear for the MSPs, the partners, right? And especially within the context of insurance, I'm very curious, where are you seeing, Al, where partners could potentially be leaving themselves liable?
That's a great question. So I think what I find the most of, most MSPs I speak to, especially because I'm in the security space, everybody wants to be in the security space, selling security, offering protections to their clients, and all too often, a major majority of the time, they don't even bother to look at themselves. And that's a serious problem. And I don't think you can sell security until you've secured yourself. And that's actually one of the reasons it took us a year to build the stack. As we looked at the landscape of our attack surface, and I literally looked around saying, WTF, how is this even possible? I'm the guy that sells it. And we have gaping holes all over the place. Now, thankfully, I knock wood, that's no longer the case, right? But when we first started up with that, I was going to sell things that I wasn't even using myself. And so I think it's important that MSPs first look inward at themselves and their company and their employees and their infrastructure and their everything. And they should do a full-on assessment of them. I mean, it's one of the reasons why in our platforms, we give our partners a fully functional version included in their account for them to use on themselves. It's not because we're great guys, we are, but it's because we truly believe you have to use it to better understand not only its value in the security life cycle, but why it's so valuable for your clients. And if you're not doing that, you are doing a huge disservice to your customer base. And frankly, I think you're leaving yourself open to litigation, and not just litigation by your client to you, but pass-through litigation by their customers who've been breached. Because if you look at CCPA or you look at New York Shield or you look at GDPR, and I can give you a litany of regulations, forgetting it for a moment about DOJ's latest announcement, which I'm still going to get to, there is pass-through liability. And so you can see your client's customers coming after you for not having protected data that you were custodians of. And you have an obligation to protect. And as a result of that, you're exposing yourself to this huge, in California, CCPA, and I'll stick with that for a moment, they have codified, they have embedded in the law the right to class action suit without proving harm. And so what they're saying is that I just need 20 people to say that they were hurt without proving it, and they can go after you, the MSP, in a class action suit. That is, for anybody on this call, if you don't realize the implications of that, you're homeless, because that kind of a suit pierces the corporate veil to the owner of the company.
Yeah.
And so your exposure is incredibly deep and wide if you're not taking care of your client. And the only way to really do that successfully is to take care of yourself first and foremost.
Well, I mean, this resonates a lot with me. I mean, there's a slight frustration, I think, internally, because my guys, you don't have admin rights, and people get over it quite quickly. They understand what it's for. They understand that it's a requirement. But I've seen on Reddit some threads where people have said, my boss has taken away my admin rights. This is disgusting. This is war. This is this. And actually, no. The truth is, we're evaluating a few security tools that they've said to us. We're looking at a whitelisting product where it's a lot of work because we're having to build a whitelist. And they said at the beginning, just FYI, you are going to be your worst customer. You are the one with most of your team will be technical, so they'll be fighting against the system. They know best. They know what they're doing. They're qualified, and you've also got probably the weirdest set of applications with your RMM and your PSA. You're making constant changes, so it's the hardest environment to secure. It's also the one that needs to be kept the most secure. So when I deploy things like IP lockdown, when I have conditional access, and all of a sudden, the guys, when they're at home, they're not able to get in as well, or they're having to jump through extra hoops, and oh my God, I've had 4 MFA prompts in 15 minutes, or they've had another phishing test and I caught them out. It's things like that actually, they don't really, I think it's a culture thing. People have to understand that as an MSP, if one of our customers takes on a security measure, if we don't take it on, it's not an option. It's not a discussion. I'm not willing to have it anymore. That's as simple as that.
Yep. Yeah. Well, because we already know MSPs are a target for these data breaches. So if you're not
stops me sleeping.
What'd you say?
Stops me sleeping.
I know this. It's like the thing of nightmares, right? So we know MSPs need to be bringing this technology in, testing it themselves so that they can be the best advisors to their clients and that they are protected as well. Do you guys want to get into any specifics of what you feel like MSPs need to be doing to keep themselves safe?
So I'll start with this from my MSP perspective, right? So, I strongly encourage all MSPs to settle on a stack. I'm going to start at 30,000 feet, and then require all your customers subscribe to that stack, whatever that is. So when we take on a new client, as an example, and I'll explain the rationale for this, we rip and replace everything they have if it isn't part of our stack. I don't do that because I try to sell them more. In fact, because we do all-in pricing, they're getting it regardless. And it would be a lot easier for me not to replace what they already have. The problem with that is, in the long run, it's much more expensive and much more risky, because now, instead of supporting the known stack that you have, you're supporting 100, I'm exaggerating, apologies. So you're supporting a dozen endpoint protection products. You're supporting
it becomes hundreds very quickly.
It really does.
You're not exaggerating at all.
And you couldn't possibly be good at all of them. It's just not possible, right? So when you take on a client, and I would strongly encourage everybody on this call, if you're not doing it today, go back and re-onboard all of your clients. Because when you bring them into your stack, two things happen very, very quickly. You, as an MSP, become much more profitable. You become more profitable because you know your stack better, you know how to lock it down better, you know how to handle the incoming tickets better. Your efficiencies go way up, margins go way up. The second thing that happens is your client is much happier. Their problems go way down. You're solving problems that do come up much faster. It is quite literally a win-win. It's ripping off a Band-Aid. I can tell you that. Nobody likes change.
Yeah.
However, it will be the best thing that you could ever do.
I mean, we've had that has been. I mean, we've accidentally done this. We didn't walk in planning to do this with our customers, but it somehow happened. And we've been evaluating a few documentation platforms recently, and monitoring platforms, and a few of these vendor agnostic platforms. And when we speak to them, I'm finding it incredibly difficult to understand their value proposition. And I'm feeling like I'm talking a different language, and I'm on these calls with them, and I'm just, I don't understand how you've got all these other MSPs who are just saying this is brilliant, we're running our lives on it, and I'm looking at it and saying I don't understand why we aren't rather. And it turns out it's because we standardized, because we don't have 18 different firewalls that we have to know how to change a rule on each one. We know what they look like because all our firewalls are the same. It's the same vendor. It's pretty much the same models. If they've got HA, you know, it's a flag. It's something we put in IT. You know, it's fairly straightforward. I've now realized what a difference that's made with our MSP, and it's something that if you're not doing, I second that. I strongly recommend doing that ASAP.
That's interesting. You're almost saying like these products aren't brilliant to me because I haven't allowed for like the bloat of why this problem would even occur.
Right. Exactly. And the more you add, the more sporadic your tool set looks, right? So 5 different endpoint protections, 6 different firewalls, the higher the likelihood that something slips through the cracks.
Yep. And
you're leaving a hole in your attack surface. When your team knows your product suite well, they can lock it down the best.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if the product doesn't have to be best of breed. I mean, it's one of those things that, oh, well, we think this is better. Well, that's fine. But if I'm not monitoring it, if I'm not able to support it, then it's not going to be better. It's going to let something through. I'm not going to realize it's happened. You're going to get hacked. And then we're all going to sit back and go, well, what could we have done?
That's right. Using firewalls as an example, right? If you don't know a firewall, then you're not properly configuring it. And an improperly configured firewall is called a router, and they're not safe.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think it's your job as an IT consultant to say, you know, trust me on this. I'm solving the problem. We don't need to be married to a specific piece of technology to do it. Right. Like that's an
right.
overemphasis, you know, which happens from the client's perspective, kind of on the wrong things.
So I think that what a lot of MSPs, and hopefully this helps them as they consider potentially standardizing. And I like this should be your 2022 goal, by the way. If you're not doing it today, this should be, because it's going to take you time to figure out what you want to standardize on. Because if you right now you're supporting 10 endpoint products, you're going to have to choose one. If you're supporting 5 email filters, you're going to have to choose one. So just accept it'll take you a year to get there for a moment.
Yeah.
And then you're going to have to start re-onboarding your clients and moving them over. So one of the things that we've done this on just give me one sec, Harry. I know you want to jump in there,
right,
but I just want to just finish the train of thought for a moment, is that you don't sell products, sell solutions. Because when you sell products, 2 things are true. They're going to want to know why they don't have that Fortinet and why you're putting in a Meraki. They shouldn't even know what the hell a Meraki or a Fortinet is, but let's leave that alone for a moment. The other problem that you're having is they're now going to price you out compared to other people selling Fortinet and selling Meraki and selling. And so you're commoditizing your offering by selling product and not solution. And that's a race to the bottom because they're going to go to the next cheapest person. So strongly encourage selling solutions and not selling products. That's a much easier lift when you convert clients and re-onboard them. I'm sorry, Harry, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, what I was just going to add, because we are, you know, as part of this bundle reimagination, we're looking at every supplier again and every vendor. And what's interesting is some of the criteria I had in my head 2 years ago has vanished, and new criteria has come in. So, for instance, a lot of the vendors are still shouting from the rooftops, oh, it fully integrates with our RMM, you can manage everything. So whatever RMM you're using, you stick in the antivirus plugin and it fully manages it. And yes, they work brilliantly. They work really, really well. The problem you have, which I didn't really realize until I kind of thought it through in one of our, we did a bit of a tabletop exercise about it and we're talking through it. Well, if your RMM gets compromised, which is feels like it could be an if and not a when, but if and when that does happen, what you don't want them to do is be able to get in, go on the antivirus module, hit uninstall all, and then start deploying their ransomware. You want them to be able to do what you want with the RMM, but our other security layers are sitting there and they will stop you.
Yep. Alex,
but it's something that they're still pushing it. So it's something else to consider.
Alex Curlian said, spot on RMM. And I recognize that name. Thank you for joining us again, Alex.
So remember that every single tool we use that makes our life easy is a way for hackers to get in and exploit our ability to service everybody. So I know that Kaseya has been top of mind for everybody because they are the latest headline, and unfortunately they also were a major headline for some time. But before them was WebRoot, before them was ConnectWise, before them was Datto, before that was SolarWinds. No,
and it will loop again.
And it will loop again, right? There isn't a single tool out there that isn't insecure. That's just a fact.
And it's, you have this, there is this remote working debate about, what should and shouldn't you be able to do remotely? And at the end of the day, you have to be pragmatic. You have to have some access. But then, the honest answer is, well, if you can do this from home, so can a hacker in pick a country, and yes, you can geo block IPs. They can set up a server here. It's happened. There's nothing that stops that. And yes, you can block it unless you get it private broadband connections to each house. And there's still ways. At the end of the day, you can still have your son, partner, whatever it might be, go onto your machine and do something. There's risks there, but everything has got to be assessed. And you think, I always go on, well, what's the worst thing that can happen? And you can imagine I'll go on for days about that. But you have to you want it to be that it's isolated to a single layer. Otherwise, it's game over.
I'm just imagining Harry every morning with the cup of coffee, gazing out the window, like he's been on the same "what's the worst that could happen," but it started 3 days ago.
It doesn't need coffee, I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
In fairness, when the Kaseya attack happened, I remember, I think 4 o'clock the following morning, I've woken up and I've gone, right, I'm just sitting there, I'm just reading through logs. Nothing has happened, but I'm reading every log. I'm writing out a list of, right, if this has happened, then this will happen. Then trying to just justify it. And I think it sounds like quite a lot of MSPs were going through that similar, maybe not at 4 a.m, but going through a very similar journey on that day, because it used to be that when someone goes down, everyone laughs and goes, oh well, I'm not with them, I'm better. It's not that. It's not all luck. That downplays the conversation, but a lot of it is. It just so happens that you weren't attacked today.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Let's not make it a point of pride, like you work with that particular vendor.
Karma will work for you, will not work for you there.
So just so you know, in our MSP, we are an on-prem Kaseya shop, and we weren't hit. I believe it was 20% because we start with 0 rights, and we only add rights that you're allowed, and that's 20%, and 80% is luck. Right, we just got lucky. How much of that, whether that's right or wrong, I believe in the 80-20 rule. I don't think we're smart enough to be the 80, so we've got to be the 20 part of that, right? So, but I think that, well, 2 things are true. The way we handled it was, I thought my team did an extraordinary job. We weren't affected. We notified. We were transparent to our client base. As a result of that, we won a $1.2 million additional contract from one of our clients. So that was because of our transparency and our openness and what we were saying. I'll also say to Kaseya's credit, and I know the channel is not a fan of Kaseya for a variety of reasons, I thought they handled it extraordinarily well. I think that they took the initiative. They did things that if you look at what SolarWinds did, or if you look at what some of the others did, they didn't take that approach. I thought that their approach was the best that I've seen so far. Is it perfect? There's no such thing. But best that I've seen so far in hindsight, right? So looking at SolarWinds and Datto and ConnectWise and Webroot pointed fingers at the MSP. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, you can't point fingers at the very. Anyway, that's a different discussion.
And there were some vendor wars which I'll not name during this Kaseya issue, and I wrote back to those vendors and made it very clear. I said, don't get me to sign a petition against this. Don't get me to do this. I'm telling you now, I'm siding with Kaseya. I said they're right.
In this instance, right, and not always. I just think they did a terrific job on that. But one of the things I thought was a really great outcome of the Kaseya event, it really forced a majority of our brethren in the MSP and MSSP space to be introspective and say, Jesus, what about us? How do we, because for the first time I was having real conversation with our MSP partners in CyberGuard. How do we deal with something like this? Like, what are you doing to help me? And how are you taking care of the data? I mean, before, MSPs would just sign up. It was an interesting, and I welcome those conversations.
Yeah, no, that's a completely valid point. Related to this, how often do you think MSPs should be reviewing their security policies and procedures, and perhaps that of their vendors too? Harry, I think had used this word before that we worked into the title of paranoia. How paranoid should an MSP be?
Very. Yeah. Whenever they blink, exactly that. Just on that note, I mean, we've had customers who will forward us like BBC News links. Oh, these people have just been hacked. Are we fully protected? And we reply, and the answer is no. And yes, people may look at that and go, well, that means no, it doesn't mean we're crap. It doesn't mean we're not doing our job. We would be completely negligent if we said to you, you were fully protected. It's a very different, it's a different conversation, isn't it? It might happen. All we can do is add layers of protection. Your house might still get broken into. It doesn't matter if you've got a security guard at the door. It can still happen. And some of the conversation is not necessarily about the protocols you had in place to prevent it happening, but how you're going to respond and how you're going to limit it. It's very different to one user's email account getting hacked and a few emails going out and a full-blown ransomware attack. One is very easy to recover from, a bit embarrassing. Everyone has a bit of a laugh at your expense, and there might be a few damaging emails. One of them is, business can be off for 3 months.
Yeah, I think that, like Harry said, you need to be paranoid as hell, right? We quite literally have the keys to the kingdom. And so, I don't know how many, if you think about all of your clients, you could destroy, think about the 1,500 businesses in the Kaseya attack. By the measure of most of the more recent supply chain attacks, Kaseya was small. It was big headline, small consequence. Not for those it happened to. And if you're on this call, nobody felt as bad for you, other than yourself, than we did, especially as a fellow Kaseya shop and knowing I offered my team out to people I know that it affected. But you need to be very paranoid. We literally hold the keys to our clients' livelihood. When I talk about our customers, our stakeholders, so I talk about our stakeholders in a much broader sense. Your customers and their stakeholders are not just them and their financial bottom line, and it's their employees and the families that eat because of those employees. It's the vendors that they buy from and the families that eat because of those vendors paying those salaries. It's the customers who rely on them. Think about the supply chain problem today. You walk into the store, you can't get toilet paper. I mean, this is what happens when your clients go out of business. Somebody isn't going to get something from them, and they may not have any other place to go to get it, by the way. And so our role and responsibility as MSPs is, this sounds somewhat egomaniacal, is greater than most people really understand, because there's so many people in that stakeholder chain that ultimately rely on us to do our job. And our job, first, if you asked anyone in my MSP, what is the single most important thing we do for our client? I encourage anybody to go on my absolutelogic.com, go on the website, call the phone number, and whoever picks up the phone, say, what's the single most important thing you do for your clients? And to a person, they better say this. To a person, they're going to say, we protect our clients' data. And that is the most important thing that we do. And they know it. It's a religion here. It's a religion. You cannot answer the phone call if you're busy worrying about data being protected. When you solve it, get back to the damn call. But that's the single most important thing we do, because there's so many lives at stake, livelihoods at stake. Let me be clear about that. We're not first responders, but livelihoods at stake. We have an obligation to protect.
Well, I mean, I had to say, one of the conversation when I say about before about culture and having the conversation with my team, I've had people go, well, if we don't have a backup option to connect to our customers' machines, then in the event that we had this and this happen, we couldn't get onto their machines. And I just turned around to them and said, right, I can have two conversations with the CEO of my customer. Conversation one is, we're really sorry, we've messed up, we can't support you for today, you're going to have a bit of a bad experience if you need support, our tools are down, we're taking it as a precaution, or we did something silly, or whatever it might be. Option two, really sorry, Mr. Customer, you've had a ransomware attack, wait for the call, you're down for a few months, days, months, whatever it might be, there's going to be disruption, look forward, you're going to need a press contact, give your insurance, go through that whole process. I don't ever want to have conversation number two. I will have conversation number one every single day if I need to. We won't look particularly competent, but if it's to save us from a breach, if it's to do the right thing from a security standpoint, then there isn't a conversation, there isn't a debate, it is a no-brainer.
So I'm going to send you, Harry, I'll send it to you too, Shannon, for everybody. So in our Kaseya response, again, we weren't breached, but we immediately shut. So I got, again, it's about the community is the most important thing. We knew something was happening before, about 45 minutes before Kaseya shut down servers. We had already shut ours down because someone in the network alerted us to the chat on Reddit. I jumped on Reddit. I saw one of the people on there saying that it was happening to them.
Source, it seems these days.
Quite literally. I called one of them. They're like, yeah, this is actually, with a couple of expletives, happening. I got off the phone and immediately shut our servers down. And in our response, and I'll send this to both of you so that you can send it out. We have a standard email template for when one of our tools goes offline, particularly one of our support tools that says, this is how you open a ticket during an outage. And so it's already built into our incident response as to how we manage that. And that's why I said our team handled it really well, because we hit the playbook and they pulled it off. They made me look really good. I'll just put it that way. But it was really. I'll send that to everybody so that you can take a look at that. That awesome. Will help you, Harry, also. So
awesome. Yeah, we'll definitely send that out in supplementary materials, guys, for sure.
And yeah, that playbook. I mean, we're on that journey. We're not fully there yet. We've been working on it for, well, we're ISO accredited, so we have bits. We've got chunks of it. And in the event of a disaster, obviously, we're able to recover. But what we want is that well-rehearsed fire drill type scenario that, every quarter, everyone's going to come in. I'm going to tell everyone, right, half of you carry on, half of you down tools, get in the meeting room now. Here's the situation. Get me out of the situation. And I'm going to sit there and play Quizmaster. And any curveball I can bring them, I'll bring them. And it's there to make sure we learn from the mistakes. And we've done it a few times, and already it's little things. That the example I always give that I think I've copied out of someone's webinar was who's feeding the team. In the event this is happening and everyone has got their heads in it, you need to make sure that someone is making sure these people are eating and sleeping and not, ideally dropping dead at their desks. Because at that point, you're in a real trouble. If whether it's a response to an attack or an attack itself or whatever it might, a preventative or it's happened, you need to make sure that the team's looked after. And if you have someone who's right, you need to just do that, and everyone else focus on the job. It gets things done much quicker.
Yeah.
1,000%. I think that I think the question was, what should MSPs do? If I could go back to that, there's just some easy thing, easy, that's probably a little strong, things to do if you're going to make a list. The first thing you should do is, again, reflect on yourself. Do a risk assessment of your organization. Do a real risk assessment of your organization. Like where do you have holes? Make sure that your team knows the company policies and procedures front and back. Make sure they're doing training. They're going through some form of training, and not just one and done, take a quiz and you're done, but ongoing training. I'm pulling a lot of stuff up from our platform. So, it's some semi-pitch, but barely a pitch, frankly, because whether you use us or not isn't relevant, because there are tools out there that do it. You should be running simulated phishing campaigns against your own team. You should be doing quarterly vulnerability assessments on your infrastructure. You should be doing annual pen tests against your infrastructure if you're hosting any of your own tools, especially. Like, so if you host your own RMM like we do, or you should be running pen tests again. These are the things that you can do to fully assess your attack surfaces vulnerabilities. And then, and only then, can you start to protect yourself. There's an old saying, don't expect what you don't inspect. How the hell do you know if you're protected if you haven't even inspected whether or not you're protected?
Yeah, Harry, I think that you ran a phishing campaign against your own team, right?
I did. I gained a bit of a reputation after I did that the first time round. I decided, rather than going off the shelf, I did something I thought they'd click on. I wrote something personalized. I tried to do it a bit generically, so I didn't send it from the normal person or the normal system. But we don't use Power BI internally at the moment. We're doing, that's a project that's ongoing. So I wrote an email from Power BI and said, see your reports from this month. And I got, I think, a 50% click rate. And most of them put their passwords in, and they're the technical guys. And after that happened, I made it a bit of a culture thing. You don't want to dress them down in front of everyone, but you want to have a bit of a laugh about it. You need to have a little bit of banter and make sure they don't do that again. And the next time round I did one that I thought might get, should get the same result. I got 25%, so half as good. The third one I did, I went really evil. I wrote, from our office manager, I wrote an email to me saying, could you please approve this month's payroll, and attached it. And no, I think I had one curious person click it, but apart from that, no one else clicked it and no credentials got entered. So to go kind of down that slope, and now everyone's scared to click on any email. If something is not expected, they run it by us. And that is what it should be. It's not, you don't want fear. You don't want someone sitting there like pointing a gun at them every time they open an email, but they need to understand that, just check it over. If you're not sure, ask someone. But not only that, there's a little bit of banter. If you click an email and you put a password in, I'm going to laugh at you a little bit. But on the flip side, you need to tell me now, because you tell us now and it's fine. Tell me in a week's time when I found an attack, that's a firing offense. You need to have that. That's it. You don't want to shame someone into, if you've done it, go into the room and you're going to get a written warning. No, if you've done it, mistakes happen, and quick communication means that we can disarm it before it gets bad. Let us know and we'll handle it. But we can only do it if you tell us.
And,
so there's
and
a
the
lot of that
important
education.
piece of that is pick a tool that gives you that visibility. Don't step over dollars to get to dimes, right? You need to pick a tool that gives you visibility into how well your team is performing, and whatever the task is, it doesn't particularly matter. Because you can get free, well, semi-free phishing that don't really fully expand on what the results look like and who it was and which were the triggers that made them move. Same thing with phishing. Same thing with training. Same thing with policies. You need visibility. Pick a tool that gives you as a leader visibility into how your team is performing without having to do spreadsheet. I almost used a bad word, sorry. Without having to massage a spreadsheet to get the information you're looking for. If you're going to spend an hour to get information out, you're never going to do it. Yeah. Just never going to happen.
Yeah. So I did have some more questions left in our script, but we have a very active chat and about 12 minutes left. So I want to make sure that we address some of these questions. And I'm combining two of them here a little bit because I like the specificity of this. Is one, I think letting the audience know what is included in that cybersecurity bundle, but also there was a question about how each of you are pricing, and it seemed like that was fairly different. Let me scroll back through here, and thank you for answering the questions as we went. Where Harry is doing the $15 per user per month, but going to also add up charges for device. And Al, you were saying you're doing AISP 197, 267, and 347 per user. So maybe we could talk about the differences in pricing, because Ross Dahlman was asking about that as well.
So Mark, I can jump in. Oh, go ahead, Harry. You go.
You go.
All right. One of us has to not be polite. I guess that'll be me. Just ugly New Yorkers. So our all-in seat means exactly what it sounds like. I include our security bundle, our compliance bundle, unlimited service. On the 197, it's remote only service. If we go on site, we do charge for that. It includes quarterly vulnerability assessments. It does not include the annual pen test. Excuse me. Pen test is the one thing that's always going to be extra that we charge for. But it also includes Office 365 with the security protection. I think that's P2 ? I don't really spend a lot of time in the details in the MSP. My apologies. So it includes all of that. And then we differentiate between remote only, on-site and remote, or on-site remote and hardware as a service. That's the only difference in those pricing levels. And so someone could quite literally pick up the phone on the 1st of the month and hang it up on the 31st of the month, and their price never changes. Now, there is a setup fee. I'll just qualify this so everybody knows. We have a minimum fee, so a 2-user office can certainly come on board with us, but they're going to pay me a minimum of $22.50 a month. That's our minimum fee in the remote only. That fee covers rip and replace. So I'm literally going to put in our own firewall. I'm literally going to put in our own switches. I'm literally going to bring in our own backup. Everything, as I said, I standardize on a stack and I never look back. And that is why we're able to have such high SLAs, low ticket counts, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
And I guess from this side, it's a bit of a contrast. I mean, I guess the UK market is a little bit different. We've found that. I mean, to be honest, we tend to be on the more expensive side. We're not always the most expensive, but we're definitely not the cheapest. Our security bundle, I mean, the £15 I've referenced is what we're charging at the moment for our essentials bundle, which is the stack that we settled on about a year ago. We're adding a few bits into it. The new bundles we're looking at the moment are going to realistically be about 35 and 50. We're looking at having that all-inclusive bundle. I guess the problem that we found in the past is that the all-inclusive bundle hasn't necessarily worked very well with our customers, and we're keen to do that. It makes a lot of sense to do that, and that is, from a standardization standpoint, that's where we need to go next. But where we currently are, well, we are where we are at the moment. I mean,
I think where you're headed to, Harry, and I didn't mean to cut you off there, and I think what you're saying is exactly right. If that's where you want to get to, as you sell clients there, you start moving clients from the bottom out. That doesn't mean fire them, right? So I'll just tell you, when we made this journey, when we started selling AISP, I went to our noisiest, and our lowest profit clients, and I said, this is all we're selling now. That's how we got rid of them. Now, I will say, some said, okay, I'll take it. Completely shocked me. I will say that. So I would say, don't fire anybody. Just sell them your minimum requirements with minimum pay.
So one thing that I think is a common theme amongst security, and it's not one we've touched on today, but it's very important in our eyes, is so when MFA started, when we started rolling it out in anger, we wrote an email out to all our customers saying, just FYI, we had this clause in the contract which says something about you have to do what we're saying, or you have to keep your network secure. We now consider MFA a minimum requirement. If you don't do it, that's absolutely fine. But just FYI, when you get hacked, we will be charging you and you will be hacked. Not obviously, hopefully it won't happen, but it will. We know it will happen because you're not taking the right precautions. And we've had our lawyers draft us a waiver form. So if someone asks for admin credentials, they've signed that, they can have them, but they know that if anything happens and we suspect it's anything to do with those credentials, we can't cover it. That's not fair. We're going to be using that same document with our security bundle. So with the latest bundle, that is. So a client's going to see, right, yes, here's what I'm paying for. Here's what you're not paying for. You are not having these security functions that we consider critical. So you, Mr. FD, CEO, whoever you might be, you are going to sign as a company director that you are opting out of these security tools that we are telling you to go for. And when we've done it with MFA, it's been quite successful. With admin, people tend to be pragmatic and go, well, I kind of need this. With these security tools, I'm not expecting a lot. People might grumble, like you said, with pricing out your lower customers. We need all customers to be doing this because no one likes to be doing hack response. No, we don't. That's not what our business does. And we want to be bringing that number down to zero. Thankfully, we don't have that many with things like MFA, but we want to be keeping that. The threats are getting worse, and we need to keep ourselves protected.
Yeah.
I think you make some good points there, Harry. Let me just also say that at some point, and like this is my, I'm always nervous that there's an old saying, anybody can sue anybody for anything, right? I don't want it. My attitude has become over the years, and this isn't an overnight thing. If you're not going to take my recommendations, you can't do business with me.
Yeah. Because
even a waiver of liability, it is only as good as your willingness to defend it. And ultimately, I'll bring this up quickly. I know we're short on time, and Shannon has a few more questions. The DOJ has now said that, and this is a release that was just. I'll put this link in the chat. That was just yesterday. They are now going to be looking to prosecute MSPs and MSSPs who participate in government work through the chain. So you don't have to be the primary contractor for the government. You can be a subcontractor through the chain. And they're going to prosecute MSPs and MSSPs who aren't protecting government data. And so no waiver of liability is going to stop the Department of Justice from coming after you, is what that means. And they're doing it under the false, I forget what the FCA. I'll get this over to you, Shannon, so you can send it out.
That means something. So, FCA is something completely different this side. So
yes,
it's like federal communications or something like that.
No, but anyway, go ahead. I'll find it.
There was a bunch of questions that I'm going to kind of consolidate, I feel like, around tech, which is somebody was asking about a PSA/ticketing system that really works. Somebody else was saying we were reviewing several RMM solutions. Which would you recommend? And then even also, Al, what is your backup solution for appliance, for agent? Thanks. So I think in some regard, people are here also just looking for recommendations around what you guys have in your own stack.
Go ahead, Harry. I'll let you start that one, since I always cut you off, apparently.
So, well, PSA, we're in the process of working with a new company called, or not a new company, we're a long-standing company where we are new to them, Halo PSA. They have grown quite a lot in the last year. They're building a lot of integrations, and we're pretty excited to start working with them. We've got some really cool things we're working together on now. The aim is to do it about Christmas, well, around Christmas Eve. So I'm going to be the evil one in the office. But yeah, I mean, that's where we're going. RMM-wise, we use ConnectWise Automate, which we found to be pretty agile. We can use it quite a lot. It's very customizable with things like scripts and integrations. There's a lot of AV integrations, although we're not using them. and backup integrations, but again, not using them for the same reasons. And backup wise, we use Sigra.
So let me start by everything with me is an explanation. So invest in your tools. Invest in tools that you can automate the most. And the reason I say that, so we're a Kaseya shop on RMM, on the RMM side, and we're a ConnectWise shop on the PSA side. If you consider both of those tools, this gray hair is real, by the way. You know, they are effectively the DOS of their respective categories, right? They're kind of clunky. They're kind of old looking. The reality is the reason we use them is because I can do more with those two platforms than I can do with any other platform out there. And just so you know, every 3 years, my entire company evaluates every single tool we use to see if it's still the best on the market at doing what we're trying to accomplish. And I've switched in the past. And so, and I'll use my RMM as an example, Kaseya. For what we do with Kaseya, here's a simple example. With Kaseya, I am able to automate the changing of administrative passwords every 15 days to a 24 random character, upper, lower, number, special character password on every system across thousands of endpoints and domains, and update IT Glue automatically with that. So none of my engineers need to know what the password is, right? That's a simple example, and it's not as simple as it sounded, believe it or not, but it's a simple example of why, for me, automation matters. Because now I've closed a serious hole in the attack surface. Most MSPs, I won't say most on this call, I'll be respectful, for most MSPs I know, have used the same admin user and password across their clients for ease of use. Unfortunately, that is a gaping hole in your security posture for your client. And so every single local or domain admin on network and in our system has a completely different password that's at least 24 characters long. And almost nobody knows what the hell it is because it changes every 15 days. But I've automated all of that. I automate workflow on our PSA. So you need to pick a tool that's going to work best for you. My recommendation is pick one that you can automate the hell out of. Because what we're able to do with automation is never hire somebody else to do what a robot can do for you. And our most expensive part of our business is people. Yep. And they're also the most unreliable.
I mean, just to, I mean, what's interesting, what you said as well. I mean, when you're looking at tools, there is a lot to be said about, you know, there's 3 tools. It's 6 of one, half a dozen of another. You know, you end up with some, when we've looked at other RMM solutions, yes, it does these things brilliantly, and then it doesn't do these things, and you've got to migrate, and it's going to be this pain. The truth is, you pick a partner you can work with, pick someone that you're higher, not higher for the personality, but pick a partner that you are confident you can grow with. They have the right integrations. They're saying the right things. They're showing maturity. If they tick those boxes, you can work out the fact it doesn't have a script to install Windows 10. You can work out the intricacies. There's always a way.
Yeah. Harry, I might have to have you contribute a blog to the Zomentum site about how to choose a vendor. Because that applies regardless if you're using cybersecurity or not, right? Making sure that they're saying the right things, that you know that they're growth focused, that you have visibility on the roadmap, and that they're doing the right things to make you happy and kind of plug everything together. So
I'll get a lot of vendor hate mail if I do that, I think.
Oh, but you know, think of all those nice desserts I can send your way in the mail.
Deal, done. You'll have it on your desk by the morning.
Perfect. So I think I feel like we're going to have to schedule a second session to get everyone together, because this was clearly, I know cybersecurity is always super popular. I think only got through maybe half to 2/3 of our questions before I just threw it to the group. And we still had a very keen audience here. So please reach out to us, guys. Let us know other topics you're interested in hearing about. And I'm sure once we get past the holidays and we are in 2022, we'll definitely be doing another one of these roundtables, because clearly there's a lot of interest and need. And we're very lucky here to have both perspectives, Al as an MSP, as well as a vendor who just has his finger on the hot button with everything that's happening with insurance, and Harry as a fellow MSP who's going and building it for himself and tearing it out, and like is such a great example for others that are looking to scale their business through security offerings as well. So thank you both so much for your time. What is the contact info for Al? I believe you are Al at CyberGuard360.com. No?
That sounds right. Everything finds me eventually. I'll just put it in here. I don't mind.
Jason, I was going to write to you, and thank you guys so much. Calvin, lots of things coming into both you guys for being on this call with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me. It was fun. Good job, Harry.
It was, and thank you. I think this is the first one that I've had that's like run completely 5 minutes over, and everybody stayed with us. So thank you to our attendees as well. I hope you all
really
have,
good. Yeah, great audience. The attendees, good questions.
Yeah, I mean the Q&A has not stopped, so
no.
keeping us all on our toes.
Yes,
you're doing something right, Shannon. That I'll say.
Oh, thank you. Have a brilliant Tuesday, guys. I'll talk to you all soon. Bye.
You'll be good. Bye.
Bye.